I'm attorney at law Merrick J. Damar,
And I'm C. Delroy Murray from the law offices of Delroy Murray and Associate.
and this is Point of Law.
Point of law.
Good nice tea for today.
Yes, sir.
So we had a question recently, and I must thank you for delivering that question to me. A student visa,
Yes.
and if you remember the questions you'd like to ask me them, we'll discuss it today regarding the student visas.
Okay, so briefly, what is a student visa?
All right,
Let's go into
good
that.
question. Now, America has a shared relationship with a lot of countries through the world where foreign students are allowed to come into the United States, study for a period of time, and of course they have to show that those particular grounds or areas of studies not necessarily offered in their country, that they're going to apply for a visa, and it's usually a college visa, college degree, and they would have to show their good standings in high school,
Right.
their transcripts, get letters of recommendation, and once they apply to a university or a block of universities, foreign students admissions office, a decision is made. Now, a student visa allows a person of good academic standings, a student, to enter the United States to further their studies with two hopes in mind. Number one, that they will return to their countries smarter, more educated, and more productive. And that would be a gift from the United States, so to speak. And this really explains and shows and highlights the relationship that America has with these countries. The second hope is that after graduation, that they would be hired by an American company, and they would continue their training here until they can apply for a green card. Now, a student visa is actually a privilege. It is not a right. And with that student visa, there are certain rights and there are certain limitations. So let's examine the rights. The rights would be to enter the United States for a certain period of time to study within a certain area of academia. And we must show that that particular studies is not necessarily offered in that country. A student visa allows the person free entry and exit within the times that they are granted the student visa. So if they're granted a 4-year student visa, number one, they have to be matriculated. So yes, they have to be matriculated, which means that they have to be in attendance.
Yes.
They have to be in attendance for the school in which they were accepted, for the time in which they were accepted, for the studies in which they were accepted, and full time.
Right.
Now, what happens if they're not matriculated? Then they would have violated the terms of the visa, and they would have to either surrender it. Now, this is not immediate. So what happens if a person comes here, decides immediately that they're going to put it off for another 6 months? Well, they're not matriculated at that point, and automatically they would have violated the terms of the visa. Now, a visa usually lasts as long as that particular discipline lasts, which, as we know, takes an average of about 4 years for the average student to complete college. Now, after the 4 years, students are allowed to extend that stay to go into higher learnings. Now, there are certain rights. After 1 year of studies, the student has the right to apply for a part-time work permit. And this is because the cost, and this is one of the limitations, actually, the cost of an education for a foreign student is actually 3 times higher than a local student.
Right.
So out-of-state students and foreign students pay the same tuition. Now, what happens next is that the student is allowed to travel back and forth during holidays to their country of origin.
Right.
The student, however, must maintain a certain academic grade standard.
Average, right.
And that grade standard or average is discussed with the particular university as to what constitutes their passing mark.
Right.
During that time, the student cannot get themselves in any legal trouble. The student will not be given any grants, any federal tuition aid, any type of loans. They would have to show that they have a place for residence, the rent is paid, or they're living with their family. They would also have to show that they're able to pay that tuition.
Right.
Now,
So, Merrick, just to interrupt you. So, when a person applies for an F1,
yes,
which is a student
which is a
visa,
student visa.
do you have to provide all those documentation as to how you're going to finance yourself while you're staying in the United States?
Very good. So part and parcel of the package would be your transcript as discussed earlier.
Right.
An acceptance from an accredited university.
Right.
A financial package
Yes.
from either one of two individuals. One would be your parents or family from the country that you're leaving, or two, an American sponsor that would have to show their bank account, their bank statement, and also enter into a written contract with the government here that they will be responsible financially for that person.
Can I interrupt you again?
Sure.
When you say enter into a written contract, are we talking about an affidavit of support?
We can call it an affidavit of support loosely.
Yes.
It is not necessarily on the same particular application that we would use, but yes, it is an affidavit of support as it pertains to a student rather than a husband or wife or other applicants in a family-based petition.
So just for clarity, you're saying that the support document that the student would require to qualify for acceptance in college would not be the same support application a person who is, say, filing by way of an adjustment of status
Correct.
would use. So
Correct. And the reason for that is this. With a family-based petition,
Yes.
we know that the federal poverty guidelines
Yes.
dictates, based on the size of the family, based on the income,
Yes.
what would be reasonable
Right.
to expect a person to be able to live off of, and if you're going to sponsor that person.
Yes.
Well, in this particular case with a student, we're not only discussing what they're going to be living off of, we're going to be discussing medical care,
Yes.
insurance, housing, the triple tuition,
Yes.
plus travel expenses to and from home, and if there's any emergencies. And we must also show that if in fact there is an emergency, that they're well equipped for that as well.
Right.
Also remember, for the first year, there's no work.
Right.
There's no work for the first
So
year.
you indicated earlier that a student can apply for a work permit.
Yes.
Is that student allowed to work on campus or off campus?
After the first year, a student is allowed to apply for a limited work permit, which is, I believe, part-time.
Yes.
And they can use that work permit for multiple purposes. They can use it to work outside of the university. They can use it to work inside of the university, like summer work programs. And curiously enough and interestingly enough, they can also use it for on-the-job training with a company that can or might eventually sponsor them for a green card while they're getting their on-the-job training.
Right.
So that work permit actually allows for more flexibility. It's the same work permit, and even though it's limited, it allows for more flexibilities.
So the on-the-job training that to which you refer, is that the OPT?
Yes, that is OPT.
Okay. And what does the OPT mean?
Well, on-the-job training pretty much allows a person who's studying a particular subject or particular discipline to now solicit help from a company, employment help that is. And while they're working there, they're learning the trade, the practical part of it, for use later on if and when they get a job somewhere else, or if and when that company decides that they're of the quality and caliber that they want to sponsor.
Yes. So one other point I want you to explain. With a F1 student, so a person who travels on a tourist visa,
Yes.
which we commonly refer to as a B1, B2.
Right.
When that person's entered, correct me if I'm wrong, When that person enters the United States, and as you know, a visa is only a document that allows you to present yourself at the port. It doesn't give you a right to enter.
Correct.
That determination is made by the immigration officer.
Correct.
Having satisfied that you are not here to breach the terms of your visa.
Correct.
Now, back to the F1 visa now. Does that person, when he or she arrives at the port of entry, is there a time certain stamp in that person's passport?
All right, very good. The visa that is in the passport, which is issued, which is a F1 visa, already has that in it. And it is not a forever visa.
Right.
It must be renewed with the I-20 application every so often.
Right.
So within that visa, there is a period of time
Yes.
under which we will start and what is expected to be finished.
Right.
And it's usually a few months before and a few months after.
Yes.
That is already in the passport.
Right.
Now, curiously enough, when a B1, B2 applicant turns up at the border for inspection,
Right.
there's already that presumption of migration. Every visitor that enters the United States, there's a presumption of migration, which means that the officer is already thinking they're going to stay here.
Yes.
And it is up to that person to defeat that train of thought with the officer.
Yes.
The officer has the ability to go into your phone, into your suitcases, and to make that determination.
Right.
With a student, that presumption of migration does not hit as hard because that visa, which is a specialty visa,
Yes.
is for a particular purpose,
Yes.
for a particular period of time,
Yes.
given to a particular reason, to a particular person for a particular reason. So the officer already understands that.
Right.
And because of the longevity of the visa, which is usually 4.5 years,
Right.
there's no need for the officer to make a determination right there and then if this person is going to go back home in 3 weeks or 6 months.
So in a nutshell,
Yes,
whereas a person who enters on a B1, B2, there would be a limitation based on how you qualify by way of the immigration officer letting you in, say, 1 month up to a period of 6 months. What would normally happen for a F1 student is that they would stamp in it DS, which is duration of stay.
Yes.
That is for the period.
That's for the period,
that
yes.
you are studying.
correct.
One other point though, and I know you're talking about F1 student. Have you ever had a situation where a person who travels on a B1 formed the opinion that because he or she was given a 10-year visa, that is the duration of time they're allowed to stay in the United States?
Sadly, yes. And I'll take it one step further.
Right.
That if they overstayed their 6 month stay and they're now into their 4th year of overstaying, they would also have the false belief that they still have 6 more years to go on the visa.
Right.
So I think you brought up an excellent point, which we must explain to our listeners that the duration of the life of the visa is not the duration of the stay. A 10-year visa means that you're free to enter in and out of the country within those 10 years as often as you wish and as often as multiple times
Right.
and as often as the officer would allow you in.
Yes.
Now, once you enter, the officer has the discretion to give you 6 months or 6 days. And that's the time you have to depart.
Yes.
Right? So yes, unfortunately, we've had those days.
You've had that situation. Now, what would happen if a person exceeds the time? Not the 10-year, because we already know prima facie that you are not allowed to stay for the duration of the visa. It's the time that is actually stamped in your passport, the entry stamp. But what happens if a person overstay on that, say, for about a day? Over the time?
Technically speaking, if a person overstays by a day, they could be barred for up to 3 years.
Right.
And if they overstay by more than, I believe, 6 months, if I'm not mistaken, they could be barred for a period of up to 10 years.
So I correct you on that. It's a year.
A year, right. Then they could be barred for a period of up to 10 years. So the important thing is, if you're going to stay more than the time given,
Yes.
apply for an extension
Right.
or go back home.
Right.
Right? Now, going back to the student visa issue now, the students now, the question is, what rights do these individuals have in the country?
Right.
And I'll take it from the mundane and ridiculous to the most important. What if they win the lottery? Can they collect? What's your answer to that one?
You know, funnily, I would want to think that they could.
They can.
Yes.
Right. Why?
Because they have the rights just like any other.
And that's the resounding point I'm trying to
Yes.
make here. The rights to sue,
Yes.
the rights to go to get hospitalized care, hospital care,
Yeah, right.
the rights to win the lottery, the rights to make complaint,
Right.
the rights to take a matter into court,
court, yes.
the rights to prosecute a matter, to
Right.
defend a matter,
Matter,
still exists under the Constitution of the United States for
For
foreign
them.
students.
Right.
Right? What rights don't they have? Well, we know they can't vote. They can't legally stay without repercussion beyond the time. They can't go not going to school anymore
Right.
or switching without permission.
Permission.
And the criminal laws would apply to them as well.
Right. Yes.
So let's talk about these students now that are protesting. And this is current. Do they have a right to protest on their campus, on their universities?
Yes, they do.
They do. Why do you say that?
Because the right to protest is a constitutional right.
And the Constitution is not specific as to who it applies to.
No,
In fact, the Constitution does not discriminate.
does not do.
And it does not
The
point out
right to
who.
assemble is a constitutional right.
But what we're seeing happening now more and more is college kids are being prosecuted and foreign students are being prosecuted. So without getting into the politics of that, because this is not what we're after,
Yes.
what we're after is, would that prosecution violate these students' constitutional rights?
Yes.
Yes, it would. So what we now have discussed is that the student has the same rights
Constitutionally.
constitutionally as another local student, right? Now, can that student, and this is an important question, study abroad? So your kids, my kids, when they did good in college, they were offered a program where they could go abroad and study. Now, what are your thoughts? What if they were offered a program to go abroad out of the United States to go and study? What do you think? Could they do that?
You mean a student who was born in the United States?
No, as a foreign student.
Who is on the F1
Yes,
visa
yes,
in the United
yes.
States? And when you say abroad, you mean out?
Going to Paris, going to Africa, to England.
I would say they would be allowed to go there if the immigration law provides for that.
Well, they would have to apply for a new rounds of visa,
Visa, right?
and it is already considered that they're doing foreign studies program
so,
here.
So for correction then,
Yes.
you're saying that a student who is here
Yes,
on an F1 program, if that student could just now make a decision to just leave from here to another foreign country.
Right.
Oh, that's what you're saying.
right. And it was a trick question
Okay.
because what would happen at that time?
Yes.
They would no longer be matriculated
right,
at the
yes.
university
Right.
under which they were allowed admissions,
Unless they are
unless they are what?
released.
They're released or given special permission.
Yes.
Right? So that's where we are at this particular point.
Right.